Hello everyone and welcome to part 4 of TechCore Web Design. Today we are going to be working on making our website actually feel like more of a website. So far we've been learning a lot of skills and you have something that definitely is a website, something that should look kind of like this, but it doesn't really quite feel like a website. There's only one page, there's not really any organization to it, there's not any navigation, so we're going to be adding all of that stuff today. Now, because this is kind of our last session, we are going to be doing stuff that can be a little bit trickier, so make sure you're following along, watch things back, and make sure you come to office hours or send me an email if you have any questions at all. So, we are going to start off by centering our website title on the page. Okay, so right now, do you see how this is kind of off to the side? It's mostly touching this side, but there's a big bunch of space over here, and it really just doesn't look super great if it's the title of my web page. So what I'm going to do is I am going to use the automatic setting for the margins to make this look a whole lot better. If I look right here, I can see that H1, which has a Miss J's website, has the ID Title 1. So I find that over here, my Title 1, and then what I want to do is I want to set the margin rather than to 50 pixels, because right now this is actually 50 pixels from the edge. I'm going to set this to auto, and what that is going to do is going to let the computer choose the right amount of margin, and that is going to center our website title on the page. So let's run that. And look, now it's nice and centered. Little things make a big difference. Now, this big box, like the box around our content, remember we talked about the box model last time. You can scroll up right here if you want to see more about our box model, right? So right now, the big box around all of this has been centered on our page, but our content, my actual text, hasn't been centered yet. So what I want to do next is number 2, is I want to align my text. And the way that I do that is with a property called text align. And this is just like that button that you would hit on a Google Drive doc, where you do like text align center. That's exactly what we're doing here, but in code. So I'm going to text align center. Now you can do text align left, right. There's all kinds of different options, but in this case we want it to be centered, and now it's centered. Now just those 2 little changes, this already looks way better, even with the horrible color scheme that I left on here. So little changes can make a big difference. The last thing that we're going to do for our title is right now, this looks pretty nice, but what if I wanted this to go all the way to the edges? Now, your first thought might be, okay, well, we have width right here. Let's change width to 100%, right? That would make sense. But if we do that, we can see it actually is more than 100%. Do you see how it goes all the way over and it is bigger than all of our other content? Now, the reason that happens is because width sets the size of our content to 100%. Remember, that is this smallest box. And then it's going to add the border and the padding and the margin outside of that 100%. So the content box is perfectly the size of this bit of screen. And you can see if I make this bigger, it is too big by the same amount that it was when it was smaller. So this isn't quite what we want. What we want to make our title fill the top of our page exactly is we can set the width again to auto. And that will make it so that it perfectly fills. See, it looks really nice. My text stays center. And this is a really baby little example of what we call responsive design, which basically means a website that responds to whatever device or user is using it. So for example, when you have a website that looks different on your phone than on your computer, that's an example of responsive design. Now, responsive design is really important because it lets us make things one time and then use it on a bunch of different devices, but it can be tricky to do. So this is just one very, very, very small example of what responsive design can look like. All right, so now we've gone through number 3. We've talked a little bit about responsive design, about why 100% width doesn't work, and the next thing we want to do is start some organization. And what we're going to do is we're going to organize our page into columns. In order to do that, we're going to go back to our index.html, and we are going to organize things into 3 different columns. By putting them into div tags. So a div tag, you can think like it's just an organization box. It's something that I put different HTML elements into so that I can move them around and put them where I want them to go. So your div tag is always going to go around some other tags. So for my first one, I'm going to put it right underneath my title here. And I'm going to make a div, and I'm going to give it the class of column. You can give it an ID if you would like as well. And so now I have my div. Okay, so I'm going to put a paragraph in here that just says like, wow, there's cool stuff in this paragraph. And then what that'll do is it's going to pop up, and now I have this, wow, there's cool stuff in this paragraph here, but it doesn't look any different than it would if I just put the paragraph in on its own. Because remember, a div doesn't do anything on its own. All it is a container for other stuff. So this is going to be the left column of my 3-column design. This is going to be my center column. So I'm going to do the same thing, div class equals col. But I'm going to put this end of the div all the way at the end of my kind of a little about section here. And then you'll notice, see how the P tag is kind of tabbed in here? I'm going to take all of this stuff and tab it in just so it's really clear. Do you see now all of this stuff, all this content is inside of this div, inside of this box that I'm using to organize it. My third div, my third column, and you can see I type dib a lot from working in the dib lab, so I keep mistyping it. So in this third box, we're going to do the same thing, class call, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to move this end tag for my div here after both my image and my link. There we go. All right, remember, when I run this, should it look any different? No, because I'm just organizing things right now. We're about to make it look a little different. Okay, so it should look exactly the same, but I have 3 different columns. My left column, my middle column, and my right column. And if you want, you can give them IDs, and you can go back up to the first lesson if you want to talk a little bit about, or actually, you can go up to the second lesson to talk a little bit more about IDs in class if you need a refresher on those. All right, so we have our 3 columns, and the next thing to do is we need to do some CSS magic on them. So we are going to go down here, and we are going to refer to our columns. So remember, our class was column. I'm going to double check today. Oh, actually, we made our class call. That's right. So there's our call class. And what I want to do is I want to set things so that float is left. So all that does is it means that, like, if there is extra space, if something doesn't completely fill the entire web page, then it should float to the left side of the page to make room for more stuff. You can float different directions, you can not have a float at all, but in this case we're going to do float left. And then I'm going to say that I want the width of each of my columns to be 33.3%, which is 1/3 approximately of the width of the website. So let's hit run. Woo! All right, see, now we have our 3 columns. Now, there's one thing I don't really like about this, which is that, do you see how this is running right into my middle column, and then my middle column is running right into my right column? And so what I want to do is add a little bit of padding. Now, let's say I wanted to add like 1% of padding. What do you think is going to happen if I do this? Let's see. So overall, this looks pretty okay until you realize that this has been bumped down. Now, I don't like how that looks. I wanted 3 columns, not 2 columns, and then a space, and then a third one. Now, what's happening is that same thing that we saw when we were trying to make this 100%. Remember, that width percentage doesn't take into account the padding. So I'm going to make my width 30.3%. Okay, so now I have right here this number. To fully fill the space, I want that number to be 3. And so my padding, if I set it to 3, that is still not going to work. And the reason that isn't going to work is because, remember, padding is on both the left and the right. So we actually, in order to make up for that 3% we're missing from our width, we want to put in 1.5% padding, and now we perfectly fill this space, and there is space between our columns, and it looks a whole lot nicer. So now that we have our nice columns all set up and looking good, our next step is to make our navigation menu. So let's go back over to that index.html file. And normally I see menus, navigation menus, right underneath titles. So that's where we're going to put ours. So right here under this H1, I'm going to put a nav block. Now, a nav block is essentially the same thing as a div. It's just a container, it's just a box that holds stuff. It doesn't really do anything. But since pretty much every website has a navigation bar, having the nav tag makes it easier to differentiate when we have a container that is actually filled with our navigation menu. Inside of that navigation menu, we are going to put an unordered list. That's what we did, one thing that we did the first week. And I'm going to put 2 list items inside of that unordered list. All right, so each of these list items is going to end up being a link to a page from our navigation menu. And that's just the way that most of them are done. Honestly, I don't have a good explanation for why, except that it works and it looks pretty good. And it's a nice way to organize things. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to make a link to our page that we are currently on, our index.html page. You can see right here, this is the name of our page. So I'm going to do an A tag, remember, because that's what we do for links. And our href is just index.html, the name of the file. Okay, and then inside of here, I'm going to give this page a name, and I'm going to call it home, right? Because this is our home page. So when I run this, now you can see there's an empty list item, and then there's one that has home in it. And if I click home, it just reloads the page. It brings me back to the page that I'm already on. Okay, now our next step is to make our navigation bar a little bit prettier looking, because right now it really just looks like a list, and probably that's not what we want our navigation bar to look like. So let's go over to our index.css page, and in here we are going to use a new way of selecting something. So right here I'm going to put nav li, and what this tells me is this bit of CSS applies to any li that is inside of nav. We use 2 different selectors here, h1, comma h2. The comma means and, the space means like inside of. So any LIs that are inside of nav. Okay, so what do we want to do these? Well, first I want to take away those bullet points. I think those look really tacky and not like a navigation menu at all, to me at least. If you like them, you can keep them, or you can change to a different list style type. So if I run this, now I don't have those dots anymore. After that, I'm going to do display inline. Remember, we practiced this last time by making the picture either inline or block. Inline means it goes right next to the previous item, and block means that it goes on a new line. In this case, I am making a horizontal menu, and I want my things to be right next to each other, so I make them inline. You can, of course, go through, add backgrounds, all of that good stuff, but this is what I'm going to leave it with for now. So this looks pretty much the same. All right, so now we have our navigation menu, but it only has one link. So what we need is a new page. The way we get that is by going over here and clicking on this Add New File button. And that is going to generate a new file. It's called File 3 right here. I'm going to rename it, I don't know, Page 2, right? Maybe you want to name it something like Cats. You can name it whatever you would like. And this is just a new blank page. So now let's take that and add it into our navigation thing. So href equals, how do we put this? I'll put the name, so cats.html, right? Just exactly what's right there. And then I want to I'll just write cats, because apparently that's what I'm putting on this page. All right, so I hit run. And so now I have two buttons. I have home and I have cats. So I can press home and it'll regenerate this page, or I can press cats and it brings me to a blank white page. Now you'll notice there's no way to get back to home from here. So let's fix that and add some content to this new cats page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control A, and that's going to select everything on this screen. And then I'm going to copy it, Control C, and bring it over, Control V, to this page. Now, one thing that you will have to fix is this right here. It says style right now for some reason, and that doesn't match the name of the page. So we're going to have to make that index. And once you do that, then all of the design should be the same between your two pages. So home and cats. So we have two exactly the same pages. But what I can do is I can go into cats and I can take out all of the content. So underneath the nav, right, because we want to keep our navigation, we want to keep our title the same. But let's see, I can take out the stuff in this paragraph and I can write new things. I really love cats. And then instead of about, I can do, you know, awesome things about cats. And I can take that out and make this a list of awesome things about cats. I can say they are fluffy. They are cute. And they like to play. And then I'm going to get rid of all of this stuff here. And make sure you leave those divs. If you get rid of any bit of the divs, then it's going to mess up your column design. Oops, like I just did there. And then here, I'm going to take out the link to the DibLab and just leave that picture of a cat. So now let's run this. And I can see that on my home page, nothing has changed. If I press my cat page, I can see that there is some different stuff going on here, all that stuff that I just typed in. Now, you can see that this awesome things about cats heading is a little bit messed up, so I'd have to go back into my CSS and make some changes there to try to fix that issue. But really, the goal from here on out is just for you to kind of play with this, add some more pages, get creative, and play with all these new tools that you've learned and make a website that you think is cool. All right, see you soon. Bye.